So I pulled out one of my favorite quotes in the book, which I think is really a good one. She says here, it simply did not occur to me that the education and upbringing of my children, provided they did not run wild, were not illiterate, and conducted themselves as civilized members of society, could be anything to do with anyone but myself, still less that it could concern some department of the state. And actually,
Mm.
that's where the balance should be, is that providing that the children are not illiterate and not running around wild and behaving in a bad, in a negative way in society, it's not really, should not really be the business of the state. So yeah, that is one of my favorite ones. Um, so the Joy Baker Fund, that's been very exciting and much needed. And I wanted to also just ask, what are some of your positives about home education in your own personal lives? Let's have a little chat about something that you think was hugely positive for you.
For me, it's the relationship with my son, because when I see some of his friends' families where they're the same age, because he's a teenager, there just seems to be a different closeness.
Mm.
And he just sort of still will confide in me about everything, and it's not seen as odd. And he will be very open and discuss stuff with me in a way that I observe his friends who are in school don't seem to have that same relationship. But some of that is literally because I'll be there alongside him. So we're learning together on things, and going on the journey as a family. And I think that's the beautiful side of it, in that it's a journey for the whole family, and you learn together, and it keeps you really, really close as well.
Yes, very, very true. I think home education is all about family. You can't, one goes along with the other. Uh, Certainly, I found my children, the older ones, being able to be so involved in the little ones' lives when they took their first steps and said their first words, being there for those moments. In some cases, almost helping raise them. That was very positive and part of the education too. Uh, and I actually feel like home education kind of destroys what they would call the generation gap. So that whole relationship of mistrust that, oh, it's them and us. I don't find that much really with my children. I mean, you've got to kind of, I've had the battle of trying to not be like too familiar where they're too cheeky or disrespectful, but also, sort of that, understanding and respecting one another. But, um, you know, the thing is that they do come and tell me things. Probably not everything, but that's also normal. Um, but you're far more in tune with where they are at emotionally and socially and all of these things.
I think part of that as well, though, is that you can to use an American phrase, you can turn on a dime with the education. So if something's not working, you can change it like that. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
nothing. We don't have a national curriculum to follow. We don't have exams at the end of the year. We just have the best interests of our child and getting them ready and fit for society and living as adults in society.
And you don't need anyone's permission to change things. You
Exactly,
shouldn't need
exactly.
it. Yeah.
Exactly. And some of this is what's going to be destroyed by the bill.
Yes.
So, you know,
Exactly. Yes. Yes. As Sam has said, she's down to her last one, who's now 13. She's grateful for all the time she got to spend with her children and all the time her children got to spend together, and they got to spend a lot of time playing. Um, I've asked in the comments for people to share their positives. So we're going to share some of those stories. So, like, another thing for me was my children had the gift of time. So those things that they were truly interested in, they were free to pursue for as long or as deep as they needed without having to be like, oh, bell's rung, got to go off to the next thing. Um, I don't know if do you feel the same about that, Alison?
yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one of the beauties of home education is you can start a project and just carry on. and carry on and carry on. You know, there's no time limit in days or whatever. I mean, how many times do you hear about even primary school kids? They start doing something at school and they bring it home half finished, and then it just ends up on the kitchen table for a couple of months, half finished, and
But
then it gets put in the bin.
That's partly because they weren't interested in it in the first place.
Well, there is that too. But you know, our children can indulge in their passions. They can use their passions. Actually, that's a really interesting point. So I was watching Simon Squibb's interview this morning with ITV, and one of the things he said was that his son is really into sword fighting, sword play at the moment, and he started to list all the things that they've started to learn with the 8-year-old. I think he's 8-year-old, through sword play. And it's everything from metallurgy to history to physical exercise to different methods of martial arts to, you know, I mean, you can take that special interest or that little twinkle of whatever it is, and you can use it. And it's especially effective if you let it develop organically. I do find if you try and push it and go, how can we make maths out of this?
Way to kill it.
Horrible wrong. Yeah, exactly. But if you know, I mean, they've naturally slid into all these things about looking at the science of sword making and things like that. So I'll have to put him in touch with some sword makers. I do actually know some sword makers, so of course. There we go.
Yeah, I have one of my daughters she started running at the age of 15 or 16. And she was able to do, like, really work on her running because she had that time. I mean, if you're in school, you don't have a lot of time. And she was doing really, really well in the half marathons and so on, coming in sort of like the top 4 ladies in and often being the first under 20 in the race. I mean, she still runs very regularly. She's actually on something like a 6-year running streak or something where she runs every single day. She doesn't compete anymore, but it's just she could because she had that time. And so there weren't many others in her category as well. So, you know, she could win. But it is an interesting thing. And when you allow them just that time to let ideas marinate, the things that they're trying, their thoughts. I have a son who's incredibly interested in American politics, as you know, Alison.
Oh, yes.
And he's done huge amounts of research on it in his spare time. You know, and he's got all the answers, I mean, too. So you can't, if you haven't done the same amount of research, you're done for. But it does give them that time to really get into things. And it's interesting how I find their sort of maturity level also with the amount of thinking that they're doing. There's a maturity, I think, that comes with that as well. My children were also, part of our home education was that they helped in the home. Everyone helped. I helped. I didn't ask them to do anything that I wasn't doing myself. So it's not that I was looking for slaves and maids and stuff. But they all had to help, and they're all very capable and they all know how to run a home. They know how to cook because that was just part of our everyday life. It wasn't something you had to go to a special class for. It was just part of everyday life. And I think in Joy's book, so there's two other books you can get hold of by Joy, Turn on the Sun and House on the Hill, and that explains some of their family life. And a lot of what they were doing was just living life, just doing the things that families do. And they would have learned an immense amount of skills just through that alone. I'm just going to see if I can see what's what's in the comments. Amy said she used to do mind maps of a subject. That's, that is also one of the great things is you teach your children how to learn. You can teach them how to learn for themselves. So you can demonstrate it through the way you learn, but you also can help connect them to resources and know how to access resources that can help them to pursue their own learning. And I don't know if you've got anything more to say about that, Michelle.
No, but that's just reminded me about when mine was younger and the magic of the library. the library was my time when I could chill when he was little, because I would go in. He knew the maximum books he could have. He would go running around the library, selecting loads of different things, but he wouldn't take them all home. He would then go to the table. He would go through every single book of this massive pile, and some would get half read and go in the they go home and we'll read them properly pile. Other ones would get all read, so oh no, they're not good enough, and they would be left. And other ones he'd read them completely through, and then he'd write it down so that he knew that they were ones he liked, but he doesn't want now. And we would always go with the full pile. And at one point, my husband had to have a library card as well, not because he needed any books, but because we had to get books out for my son, which took up his library card, my library card, and my husband's library card, because that if he had a particular interest, he had to know everything, which meant he went and found everything on that particular topic that he could, because this was what he wanted to do now. And now doesn't allow for next week. Now is now, and they must go home, be spread out, and they must all be studied in the way that he wanted to at that point. And it was, lots of stuff that I have no interest in myself, where he would come and be telling me random facts, and it's like, okay. And if I didn't know it, which I wouldn't know because I didn't have that interest, then he would have to show me how I should have known it, and he'd expect, well, you're the adult, you should know. But it meant that he now is much clearer on what he wants to do as he grows up, because he had that freedom to really, really deep dive into stuff when he was little, to find what actually interests him. So now, if I try and sort of send him off on topics he's not that interested in, I'm not going to get very far, because he knows he's got his plan, and he knows where he's going.
It's really interesting also to watch your children when they learn naturally without outside of a classroom, when they're not actually having to stick to a specific timetable, because I had some children who would go from one subject to another, but they would learn quite a lot in depth about one thing, and then something else would take their interest, and they'd learn quite a lot about something else. I've got one child who can tell you all about wolves, but she can also tell you all about mushrooms and all about tree roots and how trees talk to each other. And, just a whole wealth of things that she knows, a lot of random facts. And it's just unusual in young people, I think, to see that. I don't think that's something you always find in a child in school, where they are there because they're told you have to be here, you have to get this, do this exam, you have to get your GCSEs or you won't get a job. It's not you have to learn this because you obviously you love it, so you're just like, yeah, you need to learn it. It's so many children, I think, don't fully understand why they're learning the stuff they're learning, other than I need to get GCSEs, otherwise I'm not going to get a job. Which is very sad, because often as adults they will learn how to learn, or once they're at university they will learn how to pursue learning for the love of it. My youngest was very, very as many boys are, he absolutely loved Lego, and he would spend days before Lego with Duplo. He would spend like 3 days building Duplo. But what he would have learned from day 1 to day 3, the amount of learning that would have taken place in understanding the structure and the strength and what works, what doesn't work, and the critical thinking, that would have all been building in his mind. Now, that's not something you can write about or measure. It's something that he's putting together in his mind, that is he is assimilating that in himself, and building up these sort of neural pathways. It's that's an amazing thing. And then he moved on to Lego, and he would take Lego sets, but he would redesign, so whatever spacecraft was currently doing the thing, or the rover, you had like the rover, Mars rover, he would kind of replicate that with Lego and design spacecraft. And interestingly, he did his A levels from home, and he is now studying engineering at university. And would like to go into aerospace engineering. And so you see this connection between the play and what we're doing naturally, what we're drawn towards naturally, and how it can actually eventually lead to a career path. They're not disconnected. And often what children are playing at, and you're allowing them as playing it naturally, that can develop into something that they choose to work in, which I think is amazing. I think Peter Gray did some studies with unschoolers where he kind of shows those connections as well. And Peter Gray is a great person to listen to and so on, because he talks about play, the importance of play. And he's got quite a few videos out and that kind of thing. So he's worth going and having a look for. I mean, we can talk a little bit about play and the importance of children having freedom to play, because one of my biggest bugbears at the moment in the curriculum and so on is we need play-based learning. Play-based learning. Play-based learning is not play. Just want to say. Yes, it can be fun and all of that, but it's adult-led play. It's not the same as allowing a child that free time to just play and explore in their minds and so on.
We know, don't we, that if children are left to play, if they're allowed to play, I mean, there's a reason why a lot of continental Europe don't start school till they're 6 or 7 years old, because there's a lot of brain development goes on before then, and you can you stunt that really good brain development by forcing them to do things rather than allowing them to play and develop and discover and learn for themselves. So all that play-based stuff, we know adults who were home educated, who were allowed to play for the vast majority of their childhood, don't we? And who are now extremely successful adults. Now, I just want to put a little bit of a rider on the word success. Success doesn't mean that you earn a lot of money. Success, I mean, it can be, but not necessarily. Success doesn't mean that you drive a fast car or you've got 2 degrees from university or whatever. Success is you being a functioning, content adult who is able to make decisions for themselves and live independently and not be reliant on state funding, etc., 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 unless necessary, obviously, disablement and things notwithstanding. But it is about you being content. It is about you not having mental health problems. It is about you being able to work and enjoy and all of those things. Success is a happy, thriving adult, basically.
Yes, so it is. And I just want to read Anna's comment from the Facebook chat, where she said her children have been able to follow their own interests and talents throughout. They are both incredibly independent now. My eldest got into college 2 years early without the GCSE requirements because he impressed them so much with his maturity and portfolio in his chosen subject. I'm so grateful that we have the freedom to home educate in the way we wish to in the UK. It has been such a blessing for our family. We've also been able to travel more than we would have done if we'd been restricted by school terms. Travel is always an incredible education. We are so lucky in our area to have access to some incredible homemade groups. So my friends have formed many wonderful friendships with other homemade children. I just want to mention, I know Anna personally. She was in my homemade group when it was still running, and she does an awesome job with her kids, and they are amazing. So well done, Anna. Cathy's spoken about free unstructured child directed play is the work of childhood, and Cathy will be joining us later today.